The EW300 is one of the best IEMs under $80, and the DSP version has one of the best implementations of DSP that I have heard. These have one of the best piezo implementations that I've heard so far, and timbre-wise, they're pretty natural and solid for tri-brit under $80. They're a direct upgrade to the EW200, both in terms of the tuning and the technical performance, as well as trading blows with even the EA500LM. I'll also be reviewing the HBB version when that comes in, but for now, starting with the red 3.5 nozzle on the EW300, the overall sound is very familiar to its younger brother, the EW200. Both are all-rounders with good low end and slam and impact, but the EW300 is just a more refined, smoother version of the EW200 while being better in the layering, as well as having a small bump in the resolution. Now, depending on your unit of the EW200, because some of them are a little bit too bright because of Sci-Fi QC and all that, but the EW300 overall will be smoother, tamer, and not so in your face in the upper mids and the treble, but still being very well extended, and you're gonna get that detail in the extension. On the 3.5 red nozzles, the vocals pop out just enough, and the highs are less peaky and sharp, and it's just overall a more mature version of the EW200. So if you like that sound of the EW200, then the EW300 will naturally be the next step. But that's not all, because the pink nozzles are actually pretty different in terms of the sound signature. The red nozzles has a more dynamic and all-rounder sound, a little bit more energetic, that does every genre very well. The pink nozzles, on the other hand, is more like laid back. It changes the sound to a more warm and comforting and bassier presentation that's better for rock, hip-hop, and metal. You're not only getting more thickness and body to the low end, but the 1 to 3K region is tamer, which does help with vocal scaling and fatigue, as well as shifting the focus more onto the low end and giving you that more bassier and warm presentation. So for those who like bass and a more like comforting and thicker sound, the pink nozzles reminds me of the original confined DELCI and the ARIA R1, which are both, warm leaning sets, and compared to those, the EW200 with the pink nozzles is basically just a better version of them. It's also slightly warm, nothing bleeding really into the mid-range. It's a relaxing listen, but you just get better instrument separation and just a better overall resolution now with the EW300. The red nozzles is just a better version of the DELCI AE Silver with better layering and separation, and then the pink nozzle is a better version of the OG DELCI, so it's like a 2-in-1, and if you're thinking of getting a DELCI, these would be better. Now versus the LM is still going to be more resolving and detailed. It's still one of the best value IEMs you can get if you just want like pure resolution, but it's going to be like brighter and more exciting than the EW300. My unit at least is decently smooth, but again, depending on the unit you get, it can't be a little bit much for some people in the highs, which is why I can see how someone would actually prefer the red nozzles of the EW200 or the pink nozzles over their LM, since it's just like less in your face, it's a different sound, it's less energetic, and you can listen to the EW300 for a longer period of time, as well as having the option for the pink nozzle for a different sound. That's why I said in the beginning it does trade blows with the LM, because the tuning is more like preference based. Some might actually prefer the EW200 more than the LM, whereas tech wise, if you're coming from like the EW100 or the EW200, the bigger resolution jump will still be like directly upgrading to the LM. Now if you own the OG EA500s, you don't need to upgrade. I would say the EW300 3.5 is overall smoother with like slightly better layering and separation, similar resolution and detail I would say, but it's not a huge upgrade. The bigger jump was still going to the LM, the Super Mix 4, or the EM10s. Now as for the DSP version, the red nozzles are more vocal focused. It has a clean and balanced sound signature, less dynamic and exciting versus the analog EW300, and not nearly as warm and bassy versus the pink version of the analog EW300. The red nozzles on the DSP is basically a mini Dino Quattro, but it's also less peaky and it's not going to be as resolving or detailed. And the red DSP is also very enjoyable for both male and female vocals. Very clean, balanced, extended with no extra coloring or like changing up the sound. Now this balance signature does mean that it's not gonna have any of that like special sauce in its tuning, but the vocals are very effortless and non-fatiguing, very similar to the OG WANERs actually. So if you enjoyed the OG WANERs, then the EW300 DSP, the red, would be the direct upgrade to the WANERs, but just with better layering and resolution. Now compared to the red, this is also just a direct upgrade to the red. These are just like a less boring version, better resolution, better layering and separation, and just overall a bump over the reds. However, depending on your HRTF, you'll either love the 5 to 10k cut, or you might find it like overly smooth in the end notes of the vocals, almost like something is missing. SimGod does try to balance this out by boosting the 13k area, which does kind of work. It makes the vocals more airy now instead of like sharp, but a cut is still a cut. There's still going to be some information missing within the 5 to 10k region, especially with the 13k peak, which does create some masking and kind of shadows the 5 to 10k area and results in some masking to the consonants of the vocals. However, the trade-off to this is that the DSP is now less fatiguing. The pig nozzle especially scales very nicely as it tames the vocals even more. Now you can run into some sharpness issues with the 13k peak on like K-pop and very energetic electronic songs, but for the most part you're gonna be fine. You still get the satisfying crash to these cymbals, but things are just like less shouty when it comes to the vocals, and you still get that clean separation in the mid bass versus the warmer analog pink version of the EW300. So basically, if you want something more dynamic and harder slamming, more exciting, then the analog EW300 will still be the better pick when it comes to like the impact and the energy, while not being like overly harsh like the original EW200. But if you want something cleaner, something smoother, something more vocal focused, then the DSP version would be the better pick for that. Now as for the mic and noise floor, they're pretty good actually. SIMGOD is using a dedicated DAC separated away from the USB-C, and it clearly works because I don't hear any of these small artifacts or any major noise or latency issues. For example, with the Dusk and the new Corks DSP2, there's still like a really quiet clipping noise when I'm like adjusting the volume while the song is playing. But when I switch to analog or the DSP version of the EW200, I don't hear the artifacts when I adjust the volume. So clearly something is working with the DAC going on here. Now gaming wise, I would still go for the analog or 3.5 version since the imaging and resolution is slightly better on those. Or just save up for the EM6L because that is still a bit better for gaming overall. Now versus some other stuff like the Titan S2 and the ARIA 2, just get the analog EW300. It's just a better version of them technically. Tuning wise, all three would fall into like that all-rounder category, fairly similar in what they're trying to do, with like the main difference being that the EW200 has better sub-bass extension and just overall better separation. Like if you're gonna spend more around $80, just get the LM. Like the LM makes the S2 and the ARIA 2 like just pointless at that point, just like a way better version of them. It can be, again, it can be a little bit bright, but it's just a better value if you're gonna spend like $80. And then versus the other sub $100 PLANARS like the T10s, the PLANARS, the F1 Pros, the analog EW300's timbre doesn't feel as light and sizzly as the other PLANARS, while still like holding up when it comes to separation, because it also does have a planar as well as two other drivers to kind of help it out. The low end impact is also slightly better on the EW200 with its dynamic driver, but overall resolution and detail still goes to the PLANARS. There's just more upper mids and treble, you just hear them better, whereas the EW300 is overall smoother and reminds me of like a better tuned version of the 10 Hi-Fi Doo-Doo that's just less shouty and less peaky. The DSP version with the pink nozzles also trades blows with the S08, as both are going for that low vocal peanut gain approach, with the main difference being that the DSP is smoother and it scales better, whereas the S08 is more energetic and sharper in its imaging. But overall, depending on your preference, either the S08 or the DSP would work. Then lastly, if you want something more neutral with less bass, go for the Tangzu Xuanyu, which is basically just the EW300 but just less bass. Or save up for the Ziga CINNO, which is literally just dead neutral. It's a straight line with very good separation, good layering, and just good technical performance at around $100. And if you're wondering where the HEXA is, both the Xuanyu and the CINNO replaces the HEXA, so just get either the Xuanyu or the CINNO instead of the HEXA. But aside from that, I'll be getting the HB version soon. Review on that later. Great releases from SIMGOD once again. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see everyone in the next one. Shout out to Rark's Cat, Dom Q, Star Buccaneers, This Call Scaldus, B_URAC, Mystic Spoon Attack, Oh Really, Walker Standard, User, Ernest, Contain Guava Juice Gains, Patrick, Bell Cell Kel, Polly J, Mr. Gorillas, Anton Risto, Git Sang Young, Tamat Pat Frachet, Ed Dunlap, Christopher Jackson, Name, Henry Claudia, Son of a Horse, 777ZK, Ben Thompson, Franco Gomez, Hegu55, Asher Wizard, Jab, and Osvaldo. Thank you guys so much for the support.